Okay, so the 2013 Flywheel has arrived, and I thought I'd do a little bit of a comparison between between the two of them. And there is actually quite a bit of difference here. So this is a 2010 Flywheel on the 2.0T, and as you can see, there's a little bit of play, which isn't all that big of a deal, that little bit of play, but the fact that it's locking, it's binding, means it's broken. The other thing being, the masses are broken. Quick note, I should have grabbed this first. On a 2010, this is the center bearing. This whole thing, little tiny piece, sits in there, it's pressed in, and that's what the input shaft on the transmission sits in. Not very big. The other thing that's a major concern is this is what the masses rest on. This little polished steel piece here is the actuation point. This inch and a quarter, inch and a half piece of metal is where the actuation is. Okay, so it's not all that great. The other thing is this has a fairly short lip. It's got 6 mounting bolts and 3 alignment pegs. It's got 6 mass studs that are not removable. It's got a center alignment dowel, which goes right here. On the reverse side, its groove for counterbalance is close to the inside. The counterbalances are tack welded on. I'm assuming probably automated. You can see here just how big where the masses rotate on is that tiny little thing. And it's only got 3 center pins for holding the second mass to the primary mass through that center plate. It's a press fit bull gear, or starter ring, whichever you guys choose to call it, and it's got quite a lip on it. It's quite big. And the timing gear, which is right here, has 2 missing notches for timing and a whole bunch of crank positioning teeth. So that's a 2010. It's made by Luke, Germany, for Hyundai and Kia, and its part number is somewhere around here, down here. And its part number is 23200-2C010. So that's a 2010. 2013, I'd hazard a guess at a little bit heavier. And we might as well start on the same side. Now I got this one used off of eBay, so that's pretty much all I know about it, but you can tell that there's some heating marks in it, and that's from somebody who doesn't know how to drive a manual, driving a manual. It's also got 6 bolts, 3 alignment pins, but you'll notice that these sections between them are cut out, and that's better ventilation to the clutch disc, helps the clutch from overheating, which apparently didn't help this fellow. The only things that are stamped into it is there's HMC, or Hyundai Motor Corporation, and Kia. SW1 Theta FRTQ, and then over here is a 2A15. I think that's probably supposed to be a 6. And then there is PHC Valeo, VALEO on it. I was lucky, I guess. Lucky, I don't know if that's the right term. But I got the bolts with it, and they're fairly substantial bolts for the pressure plate. The mounting height doesn't seem to have changed, but you'll notice though that the disc surface is uniform, whereas in the 2010 there are notches cut out of the disc surface. So a more even wear throughout the disc. There is a retainer plate that looks like it's bolted in. And it's got the flywheel part number, which is 23200-2C050. And then it's got 0033 HBA after it, but I don't know what that means. So this went from a 240 millimeter disc to the 260 millimeter disc that you see here. Another change is if you remember, I showed you earlier in the video that this is your center bearing, basically what your flywheel rides on. Well, the new one is twice as big. It's 2 inches across. And it's press fit again, so it's replaceable. But you'll see here it's huge, it's ginormous, it's really big. It's the whole diameter of that. What was the size of the mass rest, in this one, that's the size of the bearing. So it's a filled bearing, sealed unit, non-serviceable, and it's made by FAG, the same people who make the bearing for this, which is a division of Luke. Or this one is a INA, I-N-A, division of Luke, either way. So the bearing is made by Luke, but the rest of the flywheel doesn't seem to be. And this plate here, this retainer plate, is actually, that's how big the mass plate is. It's that big. It's huge. It's a huge surface area compared to this one, which is only, well, as big as that. I mean, it's like 4 times bigger in size. Much different design. The previous version only had 3 retainer bolts in the center section. This one has 6 with provisional for 7, but I'm assuming that's an alignment pin peek through. We'll check that out from the other side. The dual mass, where it bolts to the plate, on the other one is only 6 bolts, and this one here is 9 bolts. I mean, that's 50% more. That's a big difference. They're also recessed, and there is vents, a lot more vents. The other one has vents too, but a lot more vents and a lot more distributed versus the other side. And this one here, which they say had 7,200 miles on it, so less than 10,000 miles. There is 0 play. Absolutely none. Much sturdier design. And it also has an integrated timing ring. and a press-on bull gear, so if this needs to be removed for whatever reason or wears out because you have a tendency of starting your car when it's already running, then you can replace it, which this person can tell from nicks in the teeth. Now this one here was mine out of my car, the 2010, and there's no nicks in the teeth. This one here is out of somebody else's who obviously doesn't know how to drive a manual because they heated their clutch. It's got nicks in the teeth. Not ruined, but not all that great either. You'll notice here that the ring is actually a different part. You can't put the old one on this one. And you'll also notice that there's a channel in this one that's closer to the outside, and the balancing is done in that channel rather than the inside. Now, outward balancing, well, the difference, I'll have to measure it, is doesn't seem like all that much. The further out to the outside that you can do the balancing, the more accurate the balancing is in the first place. So this is a good step in the right direction. Other notes would be the fact that they've switched to a copper weight. Not sure if that'd be a longevity thing, but it's just curious to note that. The other thing is this one does not seem to rust nearly as quickly as the previous one did. My other one cleaned it up and it was back to being rusty in a couple of days. This one has spent the past 2 weeks in the mail, cleaned it up, and this is how much rust is on it. I mean, it's still got shiny tool marks on it. And here's the retention bolts. Now on the other one, you could only see the retention bolts from the one side. This one, as you can see, they go straight through. So this one also has a lock. It seems to be one directional. Or else I just don't have the strength to turn the springs. But there's no play, there's no chatter, and it moves quite readily. And you'll notice that the bearing has a retention collar on this side, which I find interesting. Which probably means the bearing can only come out one direction, unlike the previous version, which the bearing can go in any way. So this retention collar is probably hot pressed in, which causes the bearing to only have a single direction to come out, and that reduces the chance that the bearing's going to walk, which is another good thing. The other thing is the bearing goes onto the shaft directly and has this inner collar that spins, whereas this version, it's actually got needle bearings on the inside. I can't really show you that, but either one. It's got needle bearings on the inside and it rolls on the needle bearings, and you have to service this. This needs to be lubed, whereas this one doesn't. It's in a sealed unit. So much better design in my opinion for that. The other thing is you'll note that the springs, the spring cavity is a little bit larger than the previous version, which hopefully means that there's different grade springs in here, or at least hopefully a different tension of spring, as well as they've increased the width of the dog, the engagement plate, which sits in here and rotates back and forth. Changing the width of the dog, which on the previous version was very, very narrow, less than the width of my thumb. This one is almost twice the width of my thumb. That larger dog hopefully means that it shouldn't break, especially if they've increased the thickness in addition to the width of the dog. Should be more suited for the amount of load and torque that hopefully we can put through it. Another interesting thing that I noticed is that there is dust caps put into the back for the retention bolts. So rather than the retention bolts being exposed like in the previous version, which I will show you. Previous version, see, you can see the retention bolt and can move the plate and you can see it. So dust can build up behind this. Okay. In this version, you can't because they put these little plugs in. And here, you can see where the crankshaft sits. It basically creates a little seal against that, and the bolts that hold the flywheel to the crankshaft block the dust from traveling in there. So they've sealed the backside of this unit to prevent dust from entering the inside. Maybe that will help keep the springs cool and prevent them from premature failure that we seem to experience a lot on. Overall, I'm quite impressed with this. It was a steal to buy it when I did. I mean, total cost being somewhere around $180 for an $800 part. That's another thing, is retail on these is a little bit over $800, whereas retail on the 2010 version from Luke is $2,100. So quite a bit of difference, over half the price in difference, which is exceptional, because if this does prove to be a valid replacement, and all we need is a proper clutch kit, which discussing with competition clutch at this moment, then hopefully we've got a dual mass solution that suits everybody. So that's if you guys have any questions or comments, put them in the section below. If you have any specific things that you'd like me to look at, or things that cause you to raise concern, like I said, put them below, or comment online on the open development thread on the forum, and I'll do my best to cover all the bases